Okay. Alright. Listen, I've been procrastinating a lot. I'm sorry. I know I said this would come out like 8 weeks ago. I didn't even start it 8 weeks ago. I'm sorry. Here we are. This is very last minute. I already whipped up the script like forever ago. I just said, I'll read it tomorrow. Well, here we are. My fellow Orthodox Zoomers, my fellow Christian Zoomers, and more generalized, my fellow Zoomers. Welcome to this video that I've constructed. Why the Crusaders were bad from a Christian perspective. Here we go. Let's get right into it. After supposedly liberating the Holy Land, the Crusaders established a patchwork of petty Latin-dominated kingdoms. And I would more like to say Frankish. I'm only saying Latin to do a distinction because, the West says that they're Latin and they speak Latin, but really they're just Germanic. It's the Germanic Church. They established these kingdoms in the Levant. They were self-serving fiefdoms carved out for glory-hungry nobles and papal scaphands. Matter of fact, the First Crusade was supposedly called by the Pope, but actually it happened because of the first ruler of the Comnenos dynasty of Byzantium, and his greatest adversary fought in the First Crusade to subvert him. These people wanted to create these states rather than sacred states meant to uphold Christian brotherhood or honor. This was never about returning the region to its rightful stewards, which they promised to give them back to the Eastern Romans, the true heirs of the Roman Empire and guardians of Christianity, but about Western expansion and destruction of Orthodoxy. True liberation would have restored Antioch, Jerusalem, and the broader Levant to Roman administration, where Orthodox liturgy, theology, and order have governed for centuries. Instead, these Frankish invaders chose to keep the territories for themselves, often relying on backroom arrangements with local Muslim rulers, and going so far as to hand over keys to sacred Christian churches like the Holy Church of the Sepulchre. Not the Orthodox patriarchs, but to Islamic families for safekeeping. The insult is just as liberating as it is revealing. But divine justice struck swiftly. These crusader states were weak, illegitimate, and short-lived, utterly incapable of sustaining themselves without constant reinforcements from Europe. Most of them barely lasted a century, if that, and collapsed under the weight of local resistance and internal rot. As they fell, their parting gift was not of piety or peace, but theft. They stole holy relics, icons, crosses, and even bones of saints were looted from Orthodox monasteries and cathedrals, and carted off to Rome and Western Europe, like war spoils. Among these was the Holy Grail. It's now lost to history, its trail vanishing the moment it was snatched from Eastern hands. It was never theirs to take, and because of their greed, it's gone forever. Now the second chapter is titled, They Were Pagan. This is a claim that I make that the Christian knights were far from righteous, and the Crusaders were, in spirit and often in practice, little more than barbaricized pagans, hiding behind the symbol of the cross. During their campaigns, it was not uncommon to see Crusaders, particularly among the Germanic contingents, adorned with the hammer of Odin, alongside the cross, fusing Christ with Thor as if the savior were just another tribal god of war. The Franks, the Teutons, the Normals, these people had been superficially Christianized, but retained their ancestral cultic rituals. One of the most cynical strategies employed by the Frankish Church was to pacify and convert the pagan Germans, and later Lithuanians, to integrate their customs, songs, and festivals into the liturgy. This syncretism poisoned the Western Church, transforming it away from something Roman and more into something Germanic and unchristian. The Crusader orders, Templars, Hospitallers, Teutonic Knights, were notorious for adopting warrior codes and initiation rites, eerily similar to the oaths of old Germanic tribes. Brotherhood sworn in blood, arcane symbols engraved on armor, rites of passage that mirrored the war bands of Odinists. Is this Christianity? Would true disciples of Christ rape, pillage, and slaughter Orthodox Christians and monastics on their way to Jerusalem? Would real servants of God desecrate monasteries in Thessaloniki, burn crops in Roman land, and murder priests on the road to Antioch? Even the popes themselves, occasionally burdened by a twitch of conscience, or more likely by embarrassment, excommunicated crusaders for their repeated atrocities against their Eastern brethren. But these excommunications were symbolic, toothless gestures. The rot was too deep. The Crusaders were never fighting for Christ. They were fighting for the plunder and papal illusion of supremacy. Now, contrary to Western belief, the Crusaders did not stop Islam. The Byzantines did, the Eastern Roman Empire did. Despite the grandiose papal proclamations and self-congratulatory Catholic revisionism, the Crusades did virtually nothing to halt the expansion of Islam. The geopolitical reality is clear. The Muslim world, whether under the Umayyads, Abbasids, Fatimids, or later the Ottomans, was not broken by Crusader invasions. It adapted, consolidated, and even benefited in many cases. The Crusader kingdoms, as previously noted, were weak and short-lived, doing little more than delay the inevitable. And yet Catholics will point to the Reconquista in Spain as a Crusader success. This is very misleading on several levels. First, the Reconquista was not a crusade in the formal sense. It was a protracted, regionally driven series of Christian resistance, undertaken largely by Iberian states without any meaningful Crusader coordination. Second, the fall of the Al-Andalus was not due to the Franks or the papacy, but to Muslim infighting, administrative decay, and sustained campaign by local Catholic and Orthodox allies. Hardly a shining example of Crusader might. And then, even what was the outcome? The Ottomans still took root in Europe. Thrace, the Balkans, even parts of Hungary fell to them. The real blows to Islamic expansion came not from Crusader steel, but from Orthodox resistance, from Eastern Roman wars that drained them against the Arabs and Seljuks, to later the Russo-Ottoman conflicts. It was Orthodox nations, Rome, Bulgaria, Serbia, Georgia, Russia, who bore the brunt of the fight against Islamic hegemony. Even the Crimean and Balkan wars that finally forced the Ottomans out of Europe were led by Orthodox coalitions that, guess what? Catholics fought against the Orthodox. The Catholic French state fought against the Orthodox in many of these moments. The Crusades, far from halting Islam, only weakened the one Christian empire capable of doing so, the Eastern Romans. My next point is that they helped Islam. This sounds extremely counterintuitive, only if you believe in the papal propaganda, that the Crusades were intended to aid the Eastern Romans in repelling Islamic invasions. The reality, however, is far darker. Rather than bolstering Eastern Christian bulwark, the Crusades acted as a destabilizing, corrosive force that undermined Christian Roman sovereignty and paved the way for Islamic victories. The Venetians, so-called allies, pillaged Roman ports, seized trade routes, and manipulated Crusader fleets into attacking Roman cities. Crusaders regularly refused to follow Eastern Roman command, instead carving out their own mini fiefdoms in the territory they were meant to help liberate. Nowhere is this betrayal more damning than the Fourth Crusade. What began as a mission to reclaim lost Roman lands devolved into the systematic looting and desecration of Constantinople itself, the capital of Christian civilization. Churches defiled, relics stolen, icons shattered. The city of Constantine, the beating heart of Christendom, reduced to a playground for Frankish degenerates. The empire never recovered from this catastrophe, though it limped on for another 2 centuries. The internal damage was irreparable, an empire gutted not by Muslims, but by supposed Christians. And what did Islam gain? It gained everything. With the Eastern Romans crippled, the Seljuks, Mamelukes, and eventually the Ottomans were free to expand with little resistance. The once mighty Roman army that had checked the caliphate at Yarmouk and Manzikert was shattered by Western swords. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 was not the result of superior Islamic power alone. It was the culmination of centuries of Catholic sabotage. Even in its final days, Constantinople held fast, under siege, undersupplied, and undermanned. It took 2 full months and the most advanced artillery the world had ever seen. Massive experimental cannons to breach its walls. Over 20,000 Ottoman soldiers died to take the desolate city, half-empty city. If the Crusaders had fulfilled their alleged purposes supporting the Eastern Romans, Constantinople most likely would still stand. But instead, in their arrogance and betrayal, the Crusaders destroyed Christendom and handed victory to its supposed enemies. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. God bless you, and this has been your favorite Orthodox Zoomer.